Hello, welcome again to Fair Tax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton,
I'm Bob Scarborough.
and we are
The
the
Fair
Fair
Tax
Tax
Guy.
Guys. I've got Fat Albert, and actually, I was digging through my Rubik's Cube collection the other day, and I found another one that actually might be a pretty good Fair Tax Cube. You ready?
Let's see it. Yeah, very
I've got
nice.
one with a dollar bill on it. And I got the backside on there, so that's upside
That's
down.
just great. Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, I like that.
This keep all of your money with the fair tax. That'll work.
100%. Yeah, we were talking about South Carolina just announcing that the Republican caucus is introducing a bill at the time of this recording to continually bring their income tax rate down. And their goal is a couple of different steps. They're at 6.2% now from 7, and then their bill is to make it eventually zero. But the next step would go from where they're at 6, when they get to 6, and it'll drop down to 3.4 something, and then into 2,
Mm.
and then
Well,
North Carolina's been doing this for a while.
when they get to zero, I'll be impressed.
Yeah, until such time as that happens, we just say, hey, the fair tax is the fix. This is the one
Ab-
that, and the fair tax structure, which is basically built for the federal taxing, can work for states. The same
oh,
model.
oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, what we're seeing now, I think is probably going to be the most likely scenario would be a state. I know that, Alabama and Georgia have been leading the way on this, trying to replace their state income tax with a fair tax style consumption tax. And if one or two of those states can actually pull that off, and then
Right.
we can see the result of what happens when you remove the income tax from the equation. And the buddy said, wow, that worked really well in Alabama and Georgia. Let's do this nationwide. We see that might work. But time is moving on. I tell you what, there is some good stuff to get to in this week's Congress.gov segment where we're keeping our eye on the Congress critters and seeing what they are doing to our tax code. And let me start off with, and there will be a recurring theme to today's Congress.gov segment. We'll start with H.R. 2473, and there's a companion bill in the Senate, 1176. And they say to amend the Internal Revenue Code to establish a new tax credit and grant program to stimulate investment and healthy nutrition options in food desserts and for other purposes. Look out, Winston-Salem. They're coming after your Krispy Kremes.
No, that's food deserts.
Okay.
But I like the food desserts
Yeah,
better.
they 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 did spell that wrong, or maybe they actually meant food. I don't know what a food desert would be,
It's
but
someplace that doesn't have any food.
okay. But they're going to be a new tax credit and a grant program to go with it to stimulate investment and healthy nutrition options. And if you read it like it is, you're right. Food deserts. It means I'm not even going to try to pull that one out. That ought to go in the Hall of Shame just for pure ambiguity. You don't know what they're talking
That's right. Did they spell the word right or what? Or
I don't
they
know if I don't know if they spelled it wrong or if they actually meant a food desert. And who knows? Well, let's move on before we use up all of our time here. HR 2463 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a credit for the labor costs of installing mechanical insulation property. That is Representative Linda Sanchez of California. So we got a credit for the investment in healthy nutrition options in food, desserts/desserts, not sure which one they meant. And you got a new credit to provide credit for labor cost of installing mechanical insulation property. And would you believe, how about HR 2440 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide for school infrastructure, finance, and innovation tax credit bonds? Have you got the recurring theme here yet?
Yes, we're targeting certain industries, certain special interests.
Yes. And are there not enough tax credits in the tax code as we speak and as it currently stands? No, apparently not. The Congress critters think we need more.
Well,
This last one about the
they,
school infrastructure innovation tax credit bonds is Representative Richard Hudson, actually up there in North Carolina, District 9.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we gotta take care of everybody one line in the tax code at a time. That's the American way, isn't it?
Uh,
I'm just
all
kidding.
right. One more time here, HR 2438. This is from Representative Aaron Houchin. I think that's how you pronounce that, from Indiana, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to create, oh, mercy, a refundable tax credit for foster families and for other purposes. That's four for four on new tax credits here.
Yeah, well, and there, I guess a tax credit, depending on, if you're going into a particular category like the foster families and things like that, certainly a wonderful gift to be able to participate in those endeavors. And it certainly takes a lot of time and money for people to take care of young children who need help. But in the tax code, maybe it might be a better way to handle uh, that, so that they don't end up in a bind. There might be a better way to handle the money, giving them
Well,
giving them some kind of credit in their tax. They got something else they got to keep up with now, in addition to taking care of the children.
Actually, refundable tax credit is, you know what that is. If your tax credit is greater than your tax liability, then you get back the difference as a refund. It's in effect just handing you that amount of cash. Why don't you just do that with a straight grant program and leave
Right.
the tax code alone? If you're going to say, all right, foster parents are going to be given, X amount of money, why don't we just give that to them as a grant,
That's
not
right.
necessarily a tax credit? It's crazy that just keep putting this junk in the tax code. One more, HR 2410, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide, an investment credit for converting non-residential buildings to affordable housing. That's Representative Mike Carey of Ohio.
Yeah.
Credit for this, credit for that, credit for something else, credit for another, credit, deduction, exclusion, exemption. Some people get them and some people don't. That is not fair. That is not right. The tax code picking winners and losers like that is just insane. And while we, the American people, continue to put up with that garbage, I will never understand. We can just get rid of all of this with the fair tax, treat everybody the same. Everybody gets you. If you want to call it a tax credit, you can say the prebate, although it's actually a tax refund more so than a tax credit. But it's the same idea. I mean, 75,000 pages of tax code and stuff like that. I wonder how many of those 75,000 pages are detailing various different credits that some people get and some people don't. It's just crazy. We need to replace it all with a fair tax.
It's picking winners and losers, and it gets so complicated and labor intensive to navigate all of the extra lines in the tax code, as opposed to here's my income, here's what I spent the money on here, and it's become so convoluted that the only way to get through it is to just mow it down completely
Yeah.
and burn it on the pile of rubbish in the backyard. Yeah.
Yeah, but tax credit for this, tax credit for that, and that will only last until the next Congress, assuming that the control of the government switches from one party to the next. all of the tax credits that one party puts in, the other party is going to try to, revoke or change or modify in some way. It's just so unstable. You can't plan for the future. It's just so crazy. Again, you're picking winners and losers. This tax system needs to go away. And I'll tell you what, and real quickly, again, the way we do this, put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes in the search bar at the top of the Congress.gov page and hit go. And as of the day we are recording this, where'd my sheet go? There it is. As of the day we are recording this, that search brings back 478 hits. And this is a late March. The Congress, session started in January. So basically, in 3 months, there have been 478 proposals to change the tax code, well over one per day. I mean, there's more proposals to change the tax code already than there are days in the year. So you can see what the average is. The Congress critters just cannot leave the tax code alone. And we need to just, and of course, we mentioned also that there's a lobbyist behind just about every one of these changes. So
Sure.
we need to pull it all out by the roots and replace it with a fair tax. And when that happens, then we will no longer have to be here every week telling people what the Congress critters are doing to the tax code.
Yeah, no doubt. And I can think of a million other things that we could be doing as entrepreneurial citizens of the greatest country in the world without having to chase our tax expenses and income and everything else. And like we always say, the government really shouldn't have any business at all knowing what we're doing uh,
Absolutely.
in our finances. They have no,
Hmm.
they don't have any need to know.
Yeah, it's you're the two things that are the most personal, the most private data that if somebody have is their medical records and their financial records.
Yeah.
And the government, wants to know about both of them. If they insist that reveal all of your financial stuff on a tax return, and if you claim the deduction for medical care, they want to know all about that as well. So none of that is the government's business in a perfect world, and we can get rid of all that stuff and keep your business when you have the fair tax. All right, let's move on here. We've got to. Uh, yeah, I mentioned we remember we talked to Randy Fisher several weeks ago about social media, and
Yeah.
I will again admit that of the three of us, you, me, and him, I am the one that is least well versed in social media. But I found something on Facebook the other day that I thought was just fascinating. It was posted there by the Americans for Fair Taxation marketing and communications account. So I don't know who actually controls that account. Maybe that's Randy. Randy could, if he's with us here, can jump into the comments and enlighten us on who might have actually done this. But somebody in their brilliance decided, all right, with all this artificial intelligence stuff
Yeah.
going around, I'm going to ask Chat GPT a question. Okay, and this is the question that they asked whoever it was. It said, "All right, assume that Congress opposes the fair tax because they refuse to surrender the power to trade tax breaks for campaign contributions, but a strong majority of voters who understand the fair tax support it. So, okay, Mr. Chat GPT, what are the top five most likely strategies to be successful in passing the fair tax into law before the year 2030? So this is what Chat GPT thinks we need to do in order to get the fair tax passed over a resistant Congress. And
Right.
they asked for what are the five most likely strategies. And at the top of the list, ChatGPT says if Congress resists the fair tax in order to maintain power over tax breaks and campaign contributions, but a strong majority of informed voters support it, the best strategies to pass it into law would be number one, build overwhelming grassroots pressure. And under that point, mass education campaigns educate the public to surely ensure that the public fully understands the fair tax benefits, eliminating payroll and income taxes, increasing take home pay, et cetera. And what we were just talking about, your business stays your business. Then mobilizing voters with petitions, ballot initiatives, and social media drives to demand action from lawmakers. Fair tax town halls and forums in every congressional district to apply direct voter pressure and state level endorsements. We were talking earlier about what the states might do with their income tax. If you get governors or legislatures on board, that would create momentum. And I would note that under that heading, several years ago here in Florida, we passed what was actually called a Senate memorial, just kind of a sentiment of the state of Florida, is that we, the state of Florida, are telling you, the federal government, we would like to see the fair tax passed. That actually got through the Florida legislature. Of course, there's really no legal, power behind it, but it just says that's something that might work. If we get enough states, several states will all pass these endorsements at their state legislature saying we would like the federal government to implement the fair tax. Then the Congress critters who don't want it because they want to maintain control over what they've got now, would have to start taking notice if state after state after state after state officially went on record as supporting and wanting the fair tax.
And that brings us to the second response of five. I believe it was five.
Yeah, five.
Leveraging primary challenges against opponents, targeting incumbents who block fair tax with well-funded pro-fair tax primary challengers. Using voter education and advertising to expose how opposition benefits politicians at voters' expense. Very interesting observation there. Form fair tax political action committees to fund candidates who pledge to support the bill.
All right. I will move to North Carolina and I will vote for you in the next election if you're going to primary some of these folks. But of course, a lot of them, they won't actively oppose the fair tax. A lot of those on the Democrat side will, but a lot of Republicans will just give you a mealy mouth answer that, well, yeah, they'll try to make you think that they support the fair tax, but they won't do anything. You won't actually, do anything about it.
Right.
So the ones that actively oppose it and the do nothings who say, yeah, I like it, but I'm not going to do anything about it, we can primary those guys.
And this is a considerable undertaking. Just looking at the first two responses from Chat GPT on this question from the Americans for Fair Taxation Marketing and Communications group, it takes volunteers, of which AFFT is all volunteers. And this is where the rubber has to meet the road with folks that are listening or watching our programming or interacting with our social media on Facebook or X. We in your state, you need to be deeply considering. Everybody is, hey, this is a great thing, and then we got to go do something else. We got to go wash our windows, or you got to go change the oil in our car, or do something else. Time management is key to invigorating our volunteer base to really get into doing some of this, to really look this over. And this is very concise, this response from Chat GPT with regard to what it has gleaned literally from the internet and brought it into a very focused, very concise reflection of what sentiment is out there. And they probably gather details from posts on social media. They probably are looking at articles in online newspapers and just from everywhere. It's really quite interesting. So we have build overwhelming grassroots pressure through mass education campaigns, mobilizing voters, fair tax town halls and forums, and state level endorsements. That's a lot to do. There needs to be, these volunteers need to, let's figure out how our organization gets down to that level on a day-to-day basis. Number two, of course, as we just said, leverage primary challenges against opponents by targeting incumbents, by utilizing voter education and advertising, and by forming fair tax political action committees. Great ideas. And now we sit here So who's going to do all this? I think
I
that
don't know.
challenge.
But our time's getting away from us here. But point three that ChatGPT came up with that says this would be an effective strategy was to force congressional action through a national referendum or state pressure. And
Hmm.
under that point, this has actually been talked about. Utilize Article 5, the Convention of States, to
Yes.
push for a constitutional amendment via state legislatures bypassing Congress. If you could put, we're going to repeal the 16th Amendment as a constitutional amendment, I think that most people, once they understand what that is, would support it. Also, work towards state resolutions demanding fair tax implementation. Again, refer you to the memorial that Florida passed here several years ago, and introduce binding voter referendums in tax heavy states to pressure federal lawmakers. Okay, well, I really believe that the fair tax leadership, or Americans for Fair Taxation, and the various state organizations as well, pretty well have this in mind already. But it's neat to see that Chat GPT, this artificial intelligence, came up with these strategies, and a lot of them are pretty much the same ones that would love to implement if we had enough, financial backing and had enough manpower to do it.
Right, and on the manpower side, it's you, me, and everybody that's watching or listening to the program to stop for a moment and really consider, because we're very close to pushing the needle a little further towards the implementation of the fair tax through Congress. Don't think we've been this close in a long time. Uh,
Okay.
and so my thinking is it's time to put some things in order in terms of what volunteers can do. And this is probably as close to a concise checklist of things that we can get involved in.
Okay, we got about 6 minutes to go and two more points. Go, number four.
Number four is align fair tax with broader reform movements. Link fair tax to campaign finance reform, exposing how politicians profit from the current tax system. The fair tax, tie it to economic growth and inflation relief, gaining bipartisan support. Partner with libertarian, which we already do, conservative and taxpayer advocacy groups to unite behind a single policy push. It has to be a wide swath of different viewpoints or different political ideologies that can bring forth a single voice that will bring this policy to bear. And we do know, as you talked a minute ago, uh, the constitutional amendment via state legislatures, there is a push for a convention of states.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would argue a little bit with one of those bullet points on number four when it talks about partnering with libertarian conservative groups. Well, the fair tax is not a partisan issue. It
Oh,
benefits everybody, even those that are on the far left of the political spectrum would still like to have more money in their paycheck, would still like to be free from doing an income tax return. The benefits of the fair tax are not limited to a particular political ideology. So
correct.
hopefully we can include people across the entire political spectrum and convince them that the fair tax, just on a nuts and bolts basis, would be a good idea for them because they would love to get more money in their paycheck. They would like to feed their family before they feed the government. They'd like to get a tax refund every month, i.e., the prebate. I mean, you don't have to be a libertarian or a conservative to think that's a good idea. So, one thing that we need to do, make sure that we as fair tax volunteers keep this as nonpartisan as we can, because it will benefit everybody. And the last point that ChatGPT came up with is one that we think we might actually have here, although not perfectly all the way there yet, and that is secure a president who will make the fair tax a top priority. Now, President Trump has, as he has mentioned the fair tax, we're fairly sure he knows about it. He's surrounded by people who know about it. And so, but, we've been talking about we need to make it figure out a way so that President Trump can say that the fair tax was his idea and get him to run with it. But ChatGPT says elect a pro-fair tax president who will campaign on tax reform, ensure fair tax supporters are appointed to key positions in the Treasury Department and on economic councils. That we've got Stephen Moore, for example, presidential economic advisor, is one of the AFFT advisory board members, use executive messaging and public pressure to force reluctant lawmakers into action. So I think ChatGPT has pretty well got it right. Things that we as the fair tax movement need to do in order to get the fair tax across the finish line.
Absolutely. And even though that last segment there, that last executive messaging and public pressure to force reluctant lawmakers into action is under the Secure a President heading, there are things that we can do to we, the constituents of our representatives in Congress, can make those phone calls. And if enough calls come in on a regular basis with positive conversations to the staff of your representative about the fair tax, then all of a sudden they're going to go into their boss and they're going to say, Representative Hofnagel, look at this. There's 100 calls this week on HR 25 or the fair tax. Same for the Senate. If we spend the time to do that, but it needs to be deliberate and happen in mass with enough people to turn heads in the halls of Congress, I think.
Yeah, well, ChatGPT summarized it all by saying, educate voters, weaponize elections, pressure Congress from the states, align the fair tax with bigger reform efforts. If all of that is done effectively, the fair tax can become law before 2030. I hope that he's correct. And just for the fun of it, we're not going to go through any of this, but I asked that very same question to X. I think it's called Grok, the artificial intelligence component within X, or Elon Musk's X platform, and I got pretty much the same answers. There are some slight variations, but they were pretty much the same answers. So that is the blueprint that we as fair tax volunteers need to follow to get the fair tax across the finish line by 2030. And if we can figure out a way to let President Trump take credit for coming up with the idea of having the fair tax, then I think we've got a really good chance to get this done.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And again, volunteers, we're here to help you. Fairtax.org has lots of great information and resources. You can get in touch with us at Fairtax Guys. We actually have links on the Fairtax.org website. And let's work together to build a plan, and let's execute that plan. And it may be phone calls, it may be working with your neighbors, friends, and so on, making the phone calls to Washington, et cetera. But now's the time to do that.
All right. Well, we got to wrap this up. Thanks for listening, sharing the videos. We certainly appreciate that. Until we meet again next week, same time, same channel here on Fairtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We're the Fair Tax Guys, providing you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you will demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? We'll just say 40,000. Okay, keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and then on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?
Oh, you'd bring home every penny.